Good morning and welcome to the Staff Hearing Officer meeting of June 2nd, 2021. My name is Ellen Kokinda and I'm stepping in as the Staff Hearing Officer for Ms. Reardon while she is away on vacation. I'm going to go ahead and open it up and start with number one, preliminary matters. If there are any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex agenda items, I did not receive any. So B, announcements and appeals. I did want to report that there was an appeal of the show decision for 2 South Quarantina. It was heard by the Planning Commission on May 20th. The Planning Commission denied the appeal, upholding the show approval, and they added some additional conditions, and the deadline to appeal the Planning Commission's decision was last night at 5 o'clock. I've not heard anything else, so keep track if you're interested in that project. No other announcements or appeals. Now I'd like to open it up for public comment for members of the public pertaining to items that are not on today's agenda. If you wish to speak, you would just need to raise your hand using the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel. And a raised hand is indicated by a red arrow pointing down. And I actually do not see anyone joining us by webinar right now. And if I could just ask Ms. Gu, did we receive any written correspondence for items not on the agenda today?
No, we did receive one for an item on the agenda, but nothing for general comment. Thank you.
Thank you. That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you for confirming that. Okay. So let's jump into the projects. We have our first project today is 1028 Laguna Street. This is the 7,500 square foot site is currently developed with a 1,949 square foot 2-story duplex with a 1,021 square foot 1-story single unit residence and a 565 square foot carport. The proposed project involves demolition of the existing wood stairs of the duplex and constructing a new wood stairway that is wider and provides a more direct access to the second floor unit. The discretionary application for today under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer for this project is a front setback modification to allow for the revised stair configuration to encroach in the 10-foot front setback. I know, is there a second slide? Okay. And yes, the environmental analyst has determined that this project is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, section 15301 and 15305. So today, Ms. Plummer, I know that you're the staff person for this project. If you'd like to go ahead and present, and then we can go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kokinda. And Mr. Russell, if you can just go right to the site plan, I believe it's the second sheet. Thank you. And then if you could just zoom in a little bit. Thank you. So we're here today to discuss a request for a front setback modification to allow for a revised stair configuration to encroach in the 10-foot front setback. This is pretty well indicated on the existing and proposed site plan. The existing is on the right, and then the left is what is being proposed, and you'll see it's slight encroachment into the 10-foot front setback. The site is a corner lot at Laguna and Figueroa, and it's currently developed with a 1949 square foot 2-story duplex. That's where the stair reconfiguration is occurring, as well as a 1,021 square foot 1-story single unit residence and a 565 square foot carport. There are no additions being proposed or demolitions proposed to any of the residential units that are existing. And then, Mr. Russell, do you have some photos? Thank you. And let's just go to the very first photo. So photo 1 is a shot of the existing stair configuration. You know, it's a pretty tight configuration. If you go to the next, I believe it's photo 3, additional shot of the stairs. So this photo shows how close the existing stair configuration is to the existing carport. There's a very tight walkway that is existing, and part of the request, which I'll discuss a little bit later, is to widen the existing stairs. So it's pretty tight already existing, and keeping it in the current configuration would definitely exacerbate the issue of the tightness of that walkway. And then let's just go through the last couple photos for additional context. That's, again, the 2-story building. You can see the stairs. So what will happen as part of this project, instead of being tight against that one side of the facade, they'll be wrapping around. So the entrance will be accessed off Laguna rather than off that walkway. And then just go through the last couple photos. Additional context of the duplex. That's back off Laguna Street, looking back at the building. And you can actually see in that photo, there's a entrance to a ground floor unit. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but there is an existing entrance walkway to that ground floor unit that will mimic the setback of the proposed stairs. And then Mr. Russell, I guess we could just go back to the site plan at this point. In terms of zoning consistency, the site is considered non-conforming to both open yard and parking requirements under Title 30. However, the current proposal for reconfiguration of the access stairs will not impact those existing conditions, so they're allowed to remain non-conforming. The front setback for this property, as I mentioned earlier, is 10 feet. And with the current request for the stair configuration, you'll see if you zoom in on, so it'll be that left photo, Mr. Russell, where the stairs are. So you'll see that they do have a slight encroachment into the setback for 4 feet into that 10-foot setback for a 6-foot distance from the property line. And you'll see that mimics the ground floor access for the lower units. For reference, the zoning ordinance does allow for those existing outside steps accessing the ground floor unit to encroach into the setback a maximum of 6 feet. So that's just allowed by ordinance. That doesn't work for the stair configuration for the second floor unit, but they would, in essence, be mimicking each other. In terms of other ideas for design for the stair configuration, the applicant did consider constructing a stairway in the current configuration, but as I mentioned, there's an existing walkway that's pretty tight against the carport, and this wasn't pursued because that condition would be worsened with the stair widening. Staff is supportive of this request because it allows for a more direct access to the second floor unit, safer and more direct access. And there's no anticipated issues of noise or privacy. The stairs are essentially in the middle of the parcel, really, and their only use is to access the second floor unit. So they're not likely to be used as a deck or some means for a amenity, if you want to look at it that way. The project was reviewed by the HLC, Historic Landmarks Commission, back in January, and they did provide favorable comments regarding the design of the proposal and didn't feel it posed consistency issues with the project compatibility criteria or with the guidelines for El Pueblo Viejo. And lastly, the project is exempt from further environmental review per CEQA guidelines 15301 and 15305. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plummer. I appreciate it. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Villegas if you want to add anything or want to walk me through any additional comments. If so, please turn on your webcam and audio and There we go.
There we go. No, actually, Pilar pretty much said everything that I was going to say. Yeah, basically, we did look at putting the staircase in its original configuration, but because the stair is wider to provide easier access to the second floor and for safety reasons, the circulation of the walkway between the carport and the new stairway just became too tight and was impossible to maintain by widening the stairway and keeping the current configuration. So that's why we did this approach on encroaching on the front setback.
Okay, thank you. And I now am going to open it up for public comment. In the meantime, I'm going to ask Ms. Plummer and Mr. Villegas if you could mute yourselves, turn off your webcams, and then once public comment is over, I'd like you all to come back. Okay, so if anyone wishes to speak on this particular agenda item, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel, and that indicates to me that you wish to speak. You only need to click the hand one time, and a raised hand is indicated by a red arrow pointing down. If you raise your hand, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. And I do not see anyone raising their hand. In the meantime, I am going to say that the staff hearing officer, we did receive one written correspondence from David Correa, and I hope I'm saying your name right, of 1022 Laguna Street, who was supportive of this front setback modification. I still don't see any hands, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and then ask Ms. Plummer and Mr. Villegas to come back on. Thank you. And thank you for bringing it back to, let's see, the proposed drawing well. So I read the staff report and I watched the Historic Landmarks Commission consent meeting as they reviewed the stairs, and I went out on the site visit and got to walk around, and it's really evident how tight the space is between the carport and the stairs. And I recognize that if you are trying to, you know, fix a second floor stairwell, outside steps, and bringing it up to code, that's going to be really tricky with that, and the circulation then gets it's compromised based on having to widen it there. So I can go ahead and agree with staff's assessment, and that the modification is consistent with the purposes intent of our zoning ordinance and is necessary to secure an appropriate improvement of the lot. I did want to ask you, Mr. Villegas, that the one thing I did notice while I was out on site, there's a corrugated plastic awning on that second floor, and I asked staff about this, but it wasn't necessarily mentioned in the scope of work, and I know that staff looked it up and determined that it was unpermitted. I didn't know, it sounded like you were planning on removing that as part of the scope of work of the project. Could you confirm that?
Yeah, in order to expedite this project, they are going to remove it. So
okay. So I'm going to, again, I can make the findings for the front setback modification that it's consistent with the zoning ordinance and that it secures an appropriate improvement on the lot, and specifically providing that access to the second floor without compromising the circulation of the carport. But I am going to add a condition just to say that you can either include in the scope of work to either remove the corrugated plastic awning from that second floor entryway, or get the approvals needed by the Historic Landmarks Commission to, if you're interested in having some type of awning. So does that make sense to you? And just include it in the scope of work, because that wasn't necessarily clear from the plans.
sure. Well,
Okay, so that's it. And you have options either way if you want to pursue that. But otherwise, thank you very much. And we can move on to the next project.
thank you.
I appreciate it. All right. Give me a minute. Okay, so Will, if you could take us to the next project, I can go ahead and read that in. Oh, actually, I'm going to pause on that. I need to announce that this project is appealable. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission. Sorry about that. Yes, my decision is appealable to the Planning Commission. You have 10 calendar days to do so. And yes, it's if you wish to do that, there's that option. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Now we can move on to the next one. Okay, give me a moment. Let me make sure that we have the applicant here. And let's see, I see the applicant is here and okay. Okay, so Mr. Henderson needs to, okay. Mr. Henderson, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Yes.
All
Hi,
right. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are
It
you?
Looks great. So it looks like I was trying to promote you, but I only see that you're available by phone. Is that accurate?
Well, no, I'm on my screen as well. So I logged in both because the weird thing is I don't have a video on my desktop computer. So I'm on my iPhone. So I can do that, but I've also logged in with my desktop. So I think I'm in good shape. This is how I've done it before.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I'm not getting video for you. I only see, I can send you,
So,
it looks like.
like I'm on my phone and usually there's just an enable video button, but I'm not seeing that.
I don't think it's possible at the moment.
Oh.
That's all right. It's the most important thing is that you're available by phone. So
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
So-
it's really weird that I don't have the video option though. I don't know why that would be.
I see. Maybe it's because
Should I
you're
log
logged in
out?
Well, you're logged in twice, but I think for time savings, we'll
Okay.
just keep it as is. I'm going to
Okay.
go ahead and read the project in the record, and I'm going to just mute you, but I'll unmute you momentarily. So stand by. Okay. So this is project B. This is 1 Mesa Lane. We got a long one here. Okay. The project consists of demolishing existing detached garage and constructing a new 742 net square foot detached garage with a 2-story, 1,152 net square foot accessory dwelling unit attached to and above a new garage, along with a 560 net square foot 2nd-story deck for the accessory dwelling unit. 2 acacia trees are proposed for removal, and an oak tree is proposed to be relocated on site. An as-built trash enclosure located within the interior setback is proposed to be demolished as well. No changes to the existing residence are proposed. The subject parcel is zoned E3 SD3 and is located primarily in the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, with a small portion at the toe of the bluff located in the Coastal Commission's original permit jurisdiction. All work is proposed within the appealable jurisdiction. Next slide, please. The discretionary applications required for this project, one is a modification to allow the construction of an accessory building within the front yard. And then the second is a coastal development permit to allow the proposed development in the appealable jurisdiction of the city's coastal zone. Next slide. And the environmental analyst has determined that the project is categorically exempt from further environmental review pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. And section 15303 allows for construction of one single-family residence or a second dwelling unit in a residential zone. So the modification itself can be found exempt from CEQA under 15305. Per the city's list of projects that qualify for categorical exemption. All right, next slide, please. And pursuant to SB Santa Barbara Municipal Code 2844, 110, when a proposed development involves the addition of an accessory dwelling unit to an existing single-family residence. So this is where the application is going to be reviewed by the staff hearing officer without a public hearing. And the staff hearing officer shall not issue a decision on the application until at least 10 calendar days after notice has been provided to the public. So in this scenario, this is there's two discretionary approvals. One is for the coastal development permit. So for accessory dwelling units that are requesting or that need a coastal development permit, there's no public hearing. So if you're a member of the public wishing, we can only receive written correspondence, but if you're interested in this project, and you wish to make comments, the scope really needs to just be on the modification request, so not on the coastal development permit, because there is no public hearing for it. The requested modification, like I said, does require a public hearing, and that decision is appealable. My decision will be appealable to the Planning Commission, and I will get to that later. So if we go to the next slide. And I think this is now our opportunity for Stephanie, or maybe not next slide, Will, but if you could, Stephanie Swanson, Ms. Swanson, if you could come on and walk us through the project, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Henderson to share his thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. Russell, can we go to page 8? Okay, so we're looking at an E3 SD3 zoned parcel that's approximately 1.2 acres in size, and it's also a bluff top property. So we can see that a little bit on the left image. The very end of the parcel, the bottom of the page in this case, is the beach. So we have a single family house with a detached garage on this site, and as the previous slides explain, the project is to demolish the existing garage and construct a new garage with an accessory dwelling unit on top. And then also an as-built trash enclosure in the interior setback is proposed for demolition. And Mr. Russell, if we can go to the next page, page 9. So we do require a modification to allow the ADU to be in the front yard. The garage itself is allowed by right, but the ADU is not, because in the coastal zone, accessory buildings that are not garages are not allowed to be in the front yard. Typically, ADUs are not reviewed by the design review boards, but in this case, this project was reviewed by the Single Family Design Board on March 22nd of this year. Because the upper story deck is not considered integral to the ADU. And so ADUs are exempt from design review, but the deck is not. And then the actual garage itself was also reviewed by the SFDB, the Single Family Design Board. And the overall project received positive comments from the board, but again, the actual ADU itself was not a part of that purview. Staff is supportive of allowing this ADU in the front yard for several reasons. One, the property is a bluff top property, and this is actually moving development farther away from the bluff, so it starts to avoid any kinds of coastal erosion issues. Two, we aren't anticipating any privacy impacts. On the right side of the screen here, just on the other side of this fence line is the public access to the Mesa Lane steps. So it isn't another house right there, another private house. To the north of the property, it's a private access easement. And so we're not dealing with a particularly dense residential neighborhood. The project meets all setbacks, it meets open yard, it meets every aspect of our municipal code, except for the fact that it's in the front yard. But in this case, the front yard is the logical place for it to be because it's pushing it away from the bluff, and it's also already in a developed flat portion of the lot. Further, ADUs are becoming very common in this neighborhood. With this application, there are 20 within a quarter-mile radius of this project site. So it's a very consistent use with the neighborhood as well. And then, Mr. Russell, if we can go back to page 3 of the plan set. We can also see that although the ADU itself is not subject to design review, it is designed to be consistent with the garage layout on the first floor that the design review board did appreciate and give positive comments for. And again, other than this issue of it being in the front yard, this project is consistent with state law for accessory dwelling units. It's consistent with the California Coastal Act, our local coastal land use plan, and our actual zoning ordinance. And we did find that the project can be found exempt from CEQA under categorical exemptions 15303 and 15305. And that is the end of my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. And now, Mr. Henderson, I'm going to unmute you. If you can unmute yourself, and here we go.
There we go.
All right, I can hear you. So again, I'm sorry
Great.
about the video, but please go ahead if there's anything that you wish to add or say about your project.
Sure. So thank you, Ellen. Dylan Henderson with SALT Architecture. And so if you can go to page 4, Russell, of the PDF. Great. I just wanted to give a little context. So this is an existing house out on the much closer to the bluff edge, and it sort of has this beautiful redwood siding, and it has this very Sea Ranch sort of vibe to it. And this property, that house has been there for a very long time. The previous owner was a woman who actually gave the Mesa Lane Steps access to the city of Santa Barbara. And so this has been sort of a long historical property with the city of Santa Barbara and sort of trading, easements and things like that to make this all work. And so on this property, the reason why this ADU is in the rear yard and above the garage is, to Stephanie's point, it's a bluff top project. There was no way to put this ADU behind this parcel because it would be out on the bluff edge itself. And based on slope stability and everything else, this is the only logical position for it. This property is, if you go to page, let's just go back to page 8, Russell, if you wouldn't mind. Actually, I'm sorry, go to page 7 so we see the survey with the photo underlay. Ellen, I believe you visited this site as well. So you know that this project is behind the private gate access, right at the top of Mesa Lane Steps. So we're not along a public street in terms of the frontage of this property. The ADU is intentionally set back over 44 feet from the front property line. So demonstrably, this ADU and this garage are in the same position as the existing garage. And so there were a lot of things that came into play with positioning this, making sure that we were being sensitive to the surrounding, making sure we weren't being too close to Mesa Lane Steps access, simply for noise and things like that, but also to make sure we had a nice privacy barrier, and wanting to have enough vegetation in front of the garage and ADU to continue blocking it from Mesa Lane Steps. And if you've stood at the top of that sort of Mesa Lane Step area, it's very densely vegetated. There's trees out on that corner that will remain. There's no intention to touch those. And so this will be very much shielded. So when we looked at it from a privacy standpoint, from an impact to public standpoint, from an encroachment into anything that would be considered sort of a negative, we were able to mitigate all of those things. And so very much working with what we have and positioning this. And this specific application is just for this ADU in the front yard over the garage. And to Stephanie's point, this was the only real place to put this. The other points are just that we're very much tied to the existing architecture of the house. We're going to do the exact same redwood board and bat siding on the house. The windows and doors will be the same color. It's sort of a nice teal. And it just has a really great architectural character to it, which I think if anyone was able to see it from Mesa Lane, they would really appreciate it, because I think it'll be a beautiful, beautiful project. And as you probably know, that property to the left of this on the page, so sort of to the west, that property is under escrow currently, and obviously they're not going to be doing much to that property, but there will be quite a bit of not redevelopment, but probably cleanup these properties, which, you know, having walked those properties just this last week, definitely are going to need that. So there'll be some activity here, which is good because it'll bring the whole area up, I think, and there won't be too much in terms of impacts to neighbors because there will be work happening out in this entire area over the next several years, I'm sure of that. So the trash enclosure, that was the last thing, the demolition of the trash enclosure. You can see this picture on the page that you're on currently in the lower right-hand corner. There's a trash enclosure that's currently been accessed by Marburg for many, many years along that Mesa Lane Steps easement. My client was pretty keen on keeping that trash enclosure because that's historically how it's been used, but they were not able to produce a document that said this is something that the easement was given to the city of Santa Barbara in perpetuity so that we could use that for public access to the beach. But we weren't able to produce a document that said that Marburg specifically was allowed to use that for the trash enclosure. So that was a condition why this has sort of taken as long as it has. I think we've been at this almost a year with the city, but one of the reasons was this, and they finally sort of relented and said, okay, we'll be willing to move that trash out of that side yard and we won't have Marburg access it there. We'll have them access it through the public gate. And so there's definitely been some, what would you call it? Well, they've given a bit to be able to get to where we are now. And so I'm hoping that we can get through this meeting with you, Ellen, and then get our final consent meeting with design review and kind of move on. So, but happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Henderson.
Sure.
And I'm going to go ahead and mute you for the time being and open
Sure.
up public comment. And then I'm going to ask you and Ms. Swanson to come back.
Great.
Okay, so want to open up public comment for this particular, for One Mesa Lane. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel. A raised hand is indicated by a red arrow pointing down. You only need to click one time and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. I don't see anyone at the moment, and if I did not receive any written correspondence on this project, if I could have Ms. Gu confirm if there's anything that's come in this morning, but otherwise I haven't received anything. Oops, I'm sorry, you are still muted. There we go.
We have not received any correspondence on this item. Thank you.
Okay, as I thought. Thank you so much for confirming. I'm still don't see anybody, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment on this item and ask Ms. Swanson, and I'm going to unmute you, Mr. Henderson, if you could unmute yourself. So I watched the design review meeting at SFDB, and I did manage to get out on site, almost getting locked in. I didn't drive a car. I thought I was gonna have to jump a fence. So good thing I didn't have to do that. But no, I was able to walk the site. This is a really, I mean, of course, there are a number of sites similar to this in Santa Barbara, but this is it's unique to see a site on the coastal bluff and knowing kind of where it's best to site new development. And reading Ms. Swanson's staff report, I definitely agree that the siting of the garage and the accessory dwelling unit makes the most sense in this area, that you wouldn't want to get any closer to the coastal bluff, and yet you're still providing a buffer kind of from that private access. There's some a question that it came up because it looks like, you know, I can see through the conditions and kind of the decision making, like moving the trash, like making sure that public access is maintained, these critical things in order for me to be able to make the findings for the coastal development permit. But I did have a question about the paving, and just I know that you are proposing a 3-car garage, but I was just wondering to hear from Mr. Henderson, from your perspective. I know that transportation staff reviewed this project as well and felt that it was the minimum amount of paving in order to accommodate turnaround on site. But if you could just walk me through, it seems like quite a bit of paving beyond what is needed for the 3-car garage. If you could just give me your thoughts on that.
Sure. So that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So this is actually pretty cool. We're not actually proposing any impervious surfaces. So we're not going to be doing anything concrete or asphalt or even permeable pavers. This is the first project, and we've been working with Creeks on this. This is the first project where we're actually getting a pervious, what would you call it, sort of a compacted grade to work that both satisfies what the fire department needs and what Creeks from City of Santa Barbara needs. And so this is a pervious material that we are proposing. I want to go to the detail. I need to find this in the sheet to see if we included this. But this is a pervious material that is really cool. Yeah, so if you go to page 18 of the PDF, and it's detail 1 in the upper right corner of the screen. And Ellen, I'm glad you brought this up because this is pretty cool. So we're going to do 12-inch native soil compacted to 90% max relative compaction with, you know, a Tensar, you know, 160 fabric membrane essentially, and then a crushed stone base that conforms to ASTM number 57 gradation at 90% relative compaction with a 12-inch minimum. So this is essentially the first crushed stone base that they're allowing that the fire department and Creeks is sort of comfortable with, where we're not having to put in permeable pavers, which are quite expensive and have a much more manicured look. So the client's goal was to have something very natural. Right now, their drive surface is dirt. And they said, we just want to leave it as dirt. We don't want to do anything else. We just want to compact the dirt and have it be a dirt driveway. Creeks came back and said, fire really came back and said, that's not going to work. You guys have to come up with something that we can drive on. And this is where we started to work with Creeks. And so they actually came up with this detail with us. And so the whole thing is going to be this compacted permeable base driveway, which is crushed stone, which is going to be great because previously we have not been able to use this, especially in this zone district in the city of Santa Barbara. So this will be a good, I won't call it an experiment, but a good precedent, Yeah.
That's wise.
Exactly. Just because I think natural driveway materials are something that have just been, people have struggled to get through and haven't been able to. So we end up with these pre-manufactured bricks all over the place. And sometimes that takes away from the natural aspect of a site. So.
Well, yeah. And I was looking at the project thinking that, you know, again, just trying to understand the material and the sizing. If you wouldn't mind going back to the site plan, kind of what were the thoughts were in that, and knowing that that Creeks and Transportation and Fire had all looked at it. Okay, and I know that most of my other questions were already addressed in the conditions. Have you read the conditions and you're aware of them? And did any, I know that it sounds like there was negotiation back and forth.
In the final letter?
Yes, in the final letter, correct.
Yeah, so let's look at that. I have advisory comments, and then I have the Creeks and the engineering and the wastewater, building and safety.
I'm sorry, this is for the conditions of approval for the, with the staff report for today's hearing.
Oh, yes.
So there are just a couple of things. One is the oak tree. Could you point to that tell me what's happening with that? If you could just point out where it's being transferred.
Sure. So if you, hold on a quick second here. So if you zoom in on the upper right corner of this screen, So you see where it says proposed, well, P, proposed relocation of the existing 4-inch oak per SFDB conditions,
Right.
consent agenda. That's the location we're going to relocate it to because it's currently right next to the existing garage. So we'll be relocating it to that location.
Okay, so so those were kind of the additional, we have our standard conditions of approval that staff add, and there were just a couple extra. So I just wanted to make sure that everything was familiar. Like I said, I did go out on site. Having read the staff report, I do agree with staff's assessment on this, and that that I can find the front yard modification is consistent with the purpose intent of the zoning ordinance. And again, specifically providing a little bit of relief between the right of way and the private development, so that you're avoiding that accessory dwelling unit to be right up on the street, and recognizing that this is an appropriate improvement on the lot. This site is extremely constrained given the coastal bluff. This is the flattest area on the site, so I can support the positioning in the front yard based on those things. I also need to make the finding that no tentative subdivision map or conditional use permit or development plan, site plan, or any other kind of application that requires planning commission approval is proposed in conjunction with this front setback modification. And moving on to the last finding, that with this particular development, I can approve the coastal development permit and can say that this project is consistent with the policies of the California Coastal Act. With the, again, my approval with the conditions is consistent with the California Coastal Act, and it won't result in any adverse effects related to coastal resources, and including public access and public views and any kind of coastal bluff erosion. So everything has been maintained. We've got no parking is required due to the location of the in proximity to bus stops, and the parking for the primary residence is also conforms to the zoning ordinance. So this project is consistent with all applicable policies of the local coastal plan, the city's local coastal plan, and all implementing guidelines in the code. So I just want to follow up that my decision on the modification is appealable to the Planning Commission. And if you wish to appeal the project, you would need to do so within 10 calendar days of this meeting. And otherwise, you are good to go, I think, at this point. Thank you so much, Ms. Swanson and Mr. Henderson.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Take
Have
care.
a good day. Bye.
Okay, and now we're going to move on to the next project, which is 412 North Quarantina. Give me just one moment to get my stuff. Okay, so 412 North Quarantina, we have Mr. Bauman, if you could please come on, and we have Trish Allen here representing the project, as well as the architect, Dwight Gregory, but I understand Ms. Allen is the one who is going to be presenting. So 412 North Quarantina, this is a property, the property is an approximately 3,499 square foot lot at the corner of North Quarantina and Reddick Streets. The existing development consists of a single story, approximately 764 net square foot single family dwelling, and a detached 601 net square foot accessory structure that was originally permitted as a garage and later converted to an accessory space. There's no on-site parking, no curb cut, and no driveway. The project proposes to provide on-site parking by installing a new 16-foot wide driveway on the Reddick Street frontage to access 2 uncovered parking spaces. The project includes replacement of all windows, plumbing and plumbing repairs and roof repairs and re-roofing. An existing 42-inch high wood fence along both property frontages is exempt from a building permit due to its height and is proposed to remain. Relocation of an existing street tree to, next slide, accommodate the proposed driveway has been approved by the Parks and Recs Commission. The discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer required for this project is the open yard modification to allow the reduction of the existing open yard area. The environmental analyst has determined that the project is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, section 15301, existing facilities, and section 15305, minor alterations and land use limitations. So, okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask Mr. Baumann if you would go ahead and present your project, and then I will pass it over to Ms. Allen to follow up.
All right. Good morning, Ms. Kukinda. So you gave us the project description. So I would add a little background. This is a very small lot, a corner lot on North Quarantina and Reddick Streets. It's developed with an old, well over 100-year-old single-family dwelling that preceded the manufacturing industrial zone. It's not uncommon in Santa Barbara to find existing older dwellings in the manufacturing industrial zone. It's non-conforming. It's a non-conforming use as far as being residential use in that zone. So the objective of the project is to achieve some on-site parking for the residents. And because the lot is so constrained by its size and the existing development, the house is quite small. The accessory building is not very big. It's just a very small lot. So as you can see on the existing site plan, really the only place to put parking is between the dwelling and the accessory building. And that is also the only current open yard area on the site as far as conforming with the location being outside the setback. So it's non-conforming to open yard. I think there is 624 square feet existing, and the requirement is 800 square feet, so it's non-conforming to the requirement. But staff is supportive of providing the parking, as you can see on the proposed site plan on the right, as an appropriate improvement. Partially supportive because there is that front yard out at the very corner facing Quarantina Street. So there is some alternative outdoor usable outdoor area, even though it doesn't comply with the requirements for open yard. So it's a bit of a trade-off between providing on-site parking and giving up some of the open yard area. But given that that's what the owner wishes to do, staff can definitely support it as an appropriate improvement. The project also involves improvements to the existing dwelling. Let's see. So the proposed 2 spaces meet the parking requirement for a dwelling unit, but they're not covered. And to propose uncovered parking spaces requires approval by the Single Family Design Board. The project went to the Single Family Design Board for comments, and they were supportive of the aesthetics of the new driveway and uncovered parking. They didn't have any issue with not providing covered parking for this project. So staff believes the findings can be made that this open yard modification is necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot, and also to prevent unreasonable hardship due to the physical characteristics of the site because it's such a small site. And architect, Mr. Gregory, provided a really good comprehensive plan set. He's got computer renderings of the project and good site photographs but I expect that the applicant would probably like to go through that in the applicant presentation. So rather than be duplicative and redundant, I think I'll conclude my presentation there and turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Baumann, much appreciated. And Ms. Allen, if you'd like to join us and follow up, if you'd like to walk us through your project or say anything else about it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Trish Allen with Suzanne Elledge, Planning and Permitting. And I believe the architect, Dwight Gregory, is here somewhere with us, listening in, and is available for questions, for maybe
Yes.
some questions you have that I might not be able to answer. So thank you, Mr. Bowman, for the thorough overview of the request. I think it's very clear that the subject property is a constrained property, not only in size and the corner configuration with 2 front yards. I don't know what is conforming about this property. I think everything is non-conforming on here, including the use. So yes, as Mr. Bowman stated, the project goal is to provide on-site parking for the use and enjoyment of this property in an area that over time has been developed and with commercial uses. Ms. Cookend, if you went out to the site to take a look, I'm sure you observed a few things. There was no street parking available, and also that the property is ready for some TLC, some maintenance and painting and that kind of thing. And so that is also, of course, one of the owner's goals, is to do some general maintenance and repair here. I will flip through the plans here shortly, Mr. Russell, but first, just a very minor point of clarification regarding the street tree. We will be removing the existing jacaranda. So that is denoted on the Reddick Street frontage with the X on the proposed site plan. That was reviewed and approved by both the Street Tree Advisory Committee and the Parks and Recreation Commission. And we won't be relocating that tree. We will be proposing a new street tree, and that is also called out. Mr. Russell, if you could zoom in on that area near the driveway, I think that would be helpful. Thank you. Keynote 27, located to the below, I'm going to say the proposed, thank you, driveway, denotes the location of a proposed new Brisbane box tree that is the appropriate tree species for this this block on Reddick Street. So just a little point of clarification. And then if we could flip to page 5 of the plans, I believe have the photos, and maybe we should just sort of look at existing conditions just really quickly. That's great. There's the front of the home facing Cortina Street. Again, we'll do some repairs out there. The middle top photo shows the Reddick Street frontage. You can kind of see that the canopy of the jacaranda tree to the left of that photo. The top right photo shows a corner perspective. So where that car is parked on Reddick is about the location for the new street tree. There's plenty of room between the proposed driveway apron and that palm tree that's there. And there's a good look at the jacaranda tree that's coming out. That's a street tree. The other vegetation that's shown in that frame that Mr. Russell zoomed in on there is not considered a tree, and we'll be just doing some general maintenance out there in the parkway. We've discussed that with Nathan Slack, I'm going to call him city arborist because I don't remember his title. And then Mr. Russell, if you can go back one, I think that's enough for the photos. Back one page in the plan set. And I think really if we focus in, I don't think you need to zoom here, but We provided these images, perspectives, if you will. We thought this was helpful for the review of the single family design board so that they could understand the relationship of the buildings to the proposed driveway and curb cut, and because they were considering uncovered parking, which we wanted to show that it's not really, the back of the cars aren't really that visible unless you're looking at a straight on view. So as you're coming down, say turning the corner at Reddick, you're just going to see a little bit of the back of the cars because they're set a distance back from the sidewalk. I agree with the staff report in terms of the findings that the provision of on-site parking is certainly an appropriate improvement. The owner would like to be able to park, and that the improvement does prevent an unreasonable hardship. I think with that concludes my presentation. And again, we're here available for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself and turning your webcam off, I'm going to open this up to public comment, and then I'll ask you all to come back. So if you wish to speak on this particular item, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel, and that indicates to me that you wish to speak. You will have 2 minutes, and a raised hand is indicated by a red arrow pointing down. And I do not see anyone at the moment. I did not receive any written correspondence on this item. I will just ask Ms. Gu to give people 1 more minute in case there was anything else that came in today.
No, we did not receive any written correspondence on this item either. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and close public comment on this item. And then if I could ask the applicant, Ms. Allen, to come back on, and then Mr. Baumann, if you wouldn't mind coming back on. So I did go out to the site, of course, and watched SFDB. This is, I think you're right, Ms. Allen, there's not much to this site that does conform with the zoning ordinance. And here's a situation where you have an owner who wishes to have parking, and in order to have parking, that means you're taking away from the open yard requirement. And so, kind of a balancing of different interests, and how do I look at this, and what does the zoning ordinance require and say? So I know that it's an effort to try to achieve both. And this is a corner lot, so you have 2 front setbacks, and we look at open yard, and our zoning ordinance doesn't identify it as existing in that front yard that faces Quarantina Street, but it could be used as kind of outdoor enjoyment. And if you look at the purpose of the open yard, and you can imagine that people could use that area in addition to being able to secure parking on site. I do know this neighborhood, it's extremely difficult to find parking. So again, I understand why the owner wishes to do so. And I can go ahead and agree with staff's findings for this particular project. I thought it was interesting that despite being permitted originally as a garage, that there was never a curb cut. I don't know when, that probably was a question that came up for you all as well, of when that was, when a curb was added, or what that even looked like. Who knows? But I'm going to go ahead and I can say that I find that the open yard modification is consistent with the purposes and intent of our zoning, the city's zoning ordinance, and also necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot by adding the parking, and that it's necessary to prevent an unreasonable hardship due to the physical characteristics of the site, as I already mentioned, kind of taking one for the other and still trying to have some type of alternative outdoor space in that front facing along Quarantina. So that's better, and I think it'll be a better project with despite being residents in this particular zone, being able to be kind of tidied up, and improvement will be a much nicer place to live. So I can go ahead and make those findings. There were no additional conditions added, and I don't have anything else to add to it. So my decision is appealable to the Planning Commission. If someone wishes to appeal, they have 10 calendar days to do so. And otherwise, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ms. Kukenda and staff.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, it's 10 o'clock. I would like to, it looks like we have our applicant for the next 3 projects. And I just want to, let's see, give me a minute here. How's everybody doing? I'm gonna keep plowing through. Excuse me for 1 minute while I get set up. And 1 more minute, just let me make sure I've got all my paperwork here. Okay, so thank you. Could you please pronounce your last name for me, just so I pronounce it correctly?
Pookie is my last name.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pookie. I'm going to go ahead and read your project in, and then we will open it up for presentations. So we have project D, 412 Anacapa Street. This project consists of a 1-lot subdivision of a parcel developed with a mixed-use building containing 1 residential unit and 1 commercial unit located at 412 Anacapa Street. No demolition or additions are proposed. The 4,758 square foot lot is developed with a mixed-use building comprised of a 1,799 square foot 3-bedroom residential unit on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floor of the building, and a 1,783 square foot commercial unit on the 1st and 2nd floor. Parking consists of 1 covered parking space for the residential unit located in an attached 291 square foot garage, 2 uncovered on-site parking spaces, 1 of which is accessible for the commercial unit, and an uncovered off-site parking space at 414B Anacapa Street. Next slide. The discretionary application required for this project is a tentative subdivision map for a 1-lot subdivision to create 1 residential and 1 commercial condominium unit. The environmental analyst has determined that the project is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to California Environmental Quality Guidelines, Section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. Okay, Ms. Plummer, please, if you would like to present the staff presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Kokinda. And then Mr. Russell, if you can just go to the project plans, it should be the first page, which is the site plan.
It's just taking a minute for the plans to load, so.
It's always a bit of a delay.
Yeah. We've got a lot of plans on for today. Mr. Russell, your computer's maxing out. Okay.
It's not happy.
I know, it's not, but we're gonna get through this. We're gonna do it. The longest staff hearing officer meeting ever. Okay.
Here we go.
Thank you.
I'll try to keep it just on a couple soft slides.
You're fine, you're fine. It's more, I get tired of hearing myself. Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kokinda. So the application we're looking at today, and Mr. Russell, I guess you can just focus on that first parcel that's closest to Anacapa Street. Thank you. So we're here today to look at a tentative subdivision map for a one-lot subdivision to create one residential and one commercial condominium unit within the existing mixed-use building. This isn't considered a condo conversion as there's only one residential unit on that parcel. And as noted in the project description, there's no demolition or additions proposed as part of this project or any exterior changes for that matter. For context, you'll see in this presentation as well as for the next two items, there was an existing development approved by the Planning Commission in 2009 for a vacant parcel to create 3 new lots and the construction of a new 3-story mixed-use building on each parcel. So that's 412 Anacapa, 414A, and 414B Anacapa. You'll see in this presentation, they were developed holistically. So there will be a little bit of overlap in some of the information as it's essentially the same for each of the parcels, what's being requested. But specifically for the site at 412 Anacapa Street, the existing building is comprised of a 1,799 square foot, 3-bedroom residential unit that occupies portions of the first, second, and third floor of the building, and a 1,783 square foot commercial unit on the first and second floor. Parking consists of one covered space located in a garage for the residential unit. And then there are an additional 2 uncovered on-site parking spaces, one of which is accessible for the commercial unit. There's already an existing uncovered off-site parking space recorded at 414B. So that's going to be the very back parcel. And then Mr. Russell, just for context, can we look at the photos? I just want to show the existing development. So that's you can see all 3 buildings. 412 is that first building, 414A behind and 414B. And then if you'll just go through these photos quickly. So that's just showing some of the interior space for the residential unit. Next, this is a roof deck. Each of the buildings has a roof deck and they do vary in size. Next slide, please. Just another picture of one of the residential units, although this is the very back building at 414B. Next slide. And that's the largest deck, and I'll cover that more when we get to 414B, but it just shows you some of the existing patio areas for the residential unit. And then we can go back to the plans. Thank you. So the project complies with all of Title 30 zoning standards. Staff included an analysis of zoning consistency in the staff report. You will note that there is one case of a non-conforming situation related to open yard that's analyzed. So when this project was originally developed in 2009, there was a different calculation for open yard. The requirement was that it was 10% of the lot area, which had to be provided on grade, but there was no requirement for minimum dimensions. So the existing development does comply with that requirement. However, under Title 30 requirements today, the standard is 15% of the lot area on grade, and that must have a minimum dimension of 10 feet. So it's considered non-conforming to Title 30 standards. And then Mr. Russell, if you can just go to the next slide of the project plans. I just want to show context of the residential unit. So you can see the garage at the lower level, a portion, a 1-bedroom that's on the first floor. And then most of the residential unit occupies the 3rd level, and then you'll see the existing roof plan. So that's the residential unit. And then if you'll go to the next slide, Mr. Russell. So this just shows context of the commercial unit floor plan. All right, thank you. And then I think you can just go back to the site plan. That's page 1. So the general plan land use designation for this project site is commercial industrial, medium high density residential, and it's located in the Lower State Street neighborhood. The Lower State Street neighborhood includes a mix of commercial, retail, hotel, and light industrial uses. It also has mixed use and multifamily development. And the project area is largely built out with office, commercial, and retail uses. And there are other residential uses within the block of the project site. So the existing development was found by staff to be consistent with the general plan and also land use elements. Also with the housing element, this project in essence is a mixed use building, and with the condominium, it'll allow for the residential unit to be sold separately from the commercial unit, which provides a additional housing opportunity for people of Santa Barbara. In addition, for the tentative subdivision map approval, it's required to comply with the state subdivision map, city ordinance, and city general plan, all of which have been analyzed in the staff report. And lastly, they need to meet the physical requirements for the residential condominiums. And it was found to meet all of those. Parking for the residential unit is located in the existing 1-car garage. Private storage was waived for this project because they have an enclosed garage for the residential unit. All utilities would be metered. There is a laundry facility provided in the residential unit. And as I stated earlier, open yard is satisfied, although it is considered non-conforming to the ground, to the on-grade open yard. It does satisfy private open yard requirements under Title 30 because it has a 240 square foot private open deck and 330 square foot roof deck. And then lastly, the environmental analyst found the project exempt from further CEQA review for CEQA guidelines 15303. And as I mentioned earlier, because there's no exterior changes being proposed as part of the project, it's exempt from design review by the Architectural Board of Review. But the original development was reviewed by the ABR, and they did approve the building during the original 2009 project. And that's it for this item. When we go on to the next 2 items, I'll cover kind of the same information, but it largely mimics some of the information that I presented here. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Great, thank you, Ms. Plummer, I appreciate it. And Ms. Poke, if you wouldn't mind adding or supplementing what Ms. Plummer has said, what you wish to cover for your presentation.
Well, thank you for the thorough presentation, Mrs. Plummer. And in the interest of times, I think I'm just going to answer questions because it is an existing project. And like I said, the presentation was pretty inclusive of all the aspects.
Thank you so much. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind to please turn your webcam off. I'm going to open up public comment for this item. If you wish to speak, you would need to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel, and it indicates to me that you wish to speak. You'll have 2 minutes to speak, and a raised hand is indicated by a red arrow pointing down. I do not see anyone wishing to speak at the time, and we did not receive any written correspondence about this request. So Ms. Gu, yep, you can confirm that we did not receive anything. Okay.
You're correct. We did not receive any written correspondence on this item. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm going to close public comment. I don't see anyone. And I would like to ask the applicant and the staff to please come back on and join. So I went out on site And of course, I read the staff report. And this project didn't require any kind of design review, of course, because there are no exterior changes being proposed. And, you know, I think in some ways there's not much that's changing because this is still a relatively new development. A lot of it conforms to the zoning. You know, there weren't too many things in terms of kind of conflicting with the zoning ordinance. And I know Ms. Plummer outlined in detail the open yard requirements. So I am able to, I agree with staff and I can go ahead and make the findings for this project that, that the tentative subdivision map is consistent with the general plan and the zoning ordinance. And because the lot size meets the lot area requirements for the density purposes, and of course the project meets all other provisions of the code as is outlined in the staff report, and that what is being proposed for this particular site is in terms of the design and the existing development will not be causing any kind of substantial environmental damage, isn't going to be impacting traffic or having major significant traffic or air quality impacts, and will not cause any kind of serious public health problems. In terms of the new condo development, I'm also able to make the findings that the project is compliant with all the provisions of Chapter 27.13, including the kind of the laundry list and the parking, the private storage space, the separate utility metering, laundry facilities, public improvement districts, density unit size, outdoor living space, storage of recreational vehicles. Again, all is outlined in Ms. Plummer's staff report, kind of with the caveat that the open yard is considered non-conforming, but it was conforming under Title 28. And there are certain areas that do conform for the private open yard area for multi-unit residential. So I can make that finding. The project is consistent also with the general plan, specifically the land use element and the housing element, because of the development, the mixed use residential development that's compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and that the development is consistent with the principles of sound community planning. So, and it won't have any kind of negative impact on the neighborhood in terms of aesthetics, the parks, the streets, parking, community facilities, and resources. So I think it's a fairly straightforward project because of the conformance to so many things, and that it was kind of addressed, you know, significantly addressed in 2009, and you're not asking for too much more in terms of just how it still meets the requirements. So with that, we can move on to the next project, and I'm going to trade one staff report for another staff report. Okay, and I will say that because each of these are separate, my decision can be appealed to the Planning Commission. Someone needs to do so within 10 calendar days of my decision, and it needs to be in writing. So let's go ahead and move on to the next project, which is 414A Anacapa Street. So this project consists of a one-lot subdivision of a parcel developed with a mixed-use building containing one residential unit, one commercial unit, located at 414A Anacapa Street. So no demolition or additions are proposed. The 5,050 square foot interior lot is developed with a mixed-use building comprised of 1,813 square foot, 3-bedroom residential unit on the first, second, and third floor of the building, and a 1,763 square foot commercial unit on the first and second floor. Parking consists of one covered space for the residential unit located in an attached 291 square foot attached garage and 3 uncovered parking spaces for the commercial unit. Next slide, please. The discretionary application required for this project is the tentative subdivision map for a 1-lot subdivision to create 1 residential and 1 commercial condominium unit. The environmental analyst has determined that the project is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to California Environmental Quality Guidelines, Section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. Ms. Plummer.
Thank you, Ms. Kokinda. And just for the sake of time, I'll try to keep it very brief. So this is largely like the first parcel 412 Anacapa. There are some differences in terms of the size of the building, residential square footage and commercial square footage, which were noted in the project description. The parcel is 5,050 square feet, and the mixed-use building is comprised of a 1,813 square foot 3-bedroom residential unit and 1,763 square foot commercial unit. Parking is also a little bit different on this parcel. It does have a covered garage for the residential unit, which you'll see it's the middle parcel there, Mr. Russell, if you can zoom in, thank you. And 3 uncovered parking spaces for the commercial units. Again, much like 412 Anacapa, there are no exterior changes being proposed to the existing mixed-use development. And we're here today to discuss a tentative subdivision map for a 1-lot subdivision to create 1 residential and 1 commercial condominium unit within this existing building. In staff's analysis, we found that it complied with the requirements of the zoning ordinance, with the exception, again, of the open yard, as the original development was required to meet Title 28 standards, that they provide 10% of the net lot area on grade with no minimum dimensions. And that has since changed under Title 30 to 15% with minimum dimensions of 10 feet. In terms of the open yard for this site, Mr. Russell, if you could go to the next slide.
And Mr. Russell's computers, there's a little bit of a lag, so he'll get to it as soon as possible.
Thank you. So this just shows you the private open yard condition for this lot. There's an existing 164 square foot private open deck, as well as a 330 square foot roof deck. So it more than satisfies the private open yard requirements. However, it's considered non-conforming to on-grade open yard per the current calculation because they will not meet the minimum dimensions necessary to achieve the open yard for that. So, but it is allowed to remain legal non-conforming because they are not doing any changes to the structure and that would impact the existing open yard condition. And in terms of consistency with the tentative subdivision map requirements, it meets the State Subdivision Map Act, as well as the city's general plan. Also the physical standards needed for residential condominiums, which are outlined in the staff report, again, with the caveat for open yard being non-conforming. And the project, as you noted in the description, is found to be exempt per CEQA guidelines 15303. I'm happy to go through any additional information if you'd like with the project plans, but I think that satisfies it for this portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Plummer. And again, I welcome Ms. Pookie if you wanted to follow up or if you wanted to say anything else. Otherwise, I will open up public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still muted. If you could unmute yourself.
Sorry. Do you have any questions for me?
I will open it up to public comment, and then if there are any questions, I will address them then. So, all right, sounds like public comment.
Hi, Ellen. It looks like you're muted.
Sorry. What did you hear and what didn't you hear?
I think we
Did
missed the public comment. Just
Okay, sorry about that. So I'm opening up to public comment. It looks like I don't see anyone in attendance right now. So I can at least say if anybody does pop in, I will look for them. But Ms. Gu, you can reconfirm that we did not receive any written correspondence for this.
Yes, reconfirming there were no written correspondence received. Thank you.
So much. I appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. We still don't have anyone attending right now. Again, I looked at the plans, the floor plans, the site plans, understand that when went out on the site visit, know that, this particular lot does not have the on-grade open yard, but it met the requirements for Title 28 back in 2009, and can see that there's, there's a significant amount of open yard that is provided for the residential unit, and knowing that this non-conforming can extend at this time. So I do not have any questions. Again, this is fortunate that the newness of the development makes it easier that it did mostly conform to, it does conform to all of our zoning ordinance. So I can make the findings with the conditions as outlined in staff report, that the tentative subdivision map is consistent with the general plan and the zoning ordinance of the city. Of course, because the lot meets the minimum lot area requirements for density purposes, and all other provisions of the code, and that the project is consistent with, the proposed is consistent with the vision for the neighborhood within the general plan, as outlined in the first finding. And in terms of finding B, the new condominium development, I can say that the project is compliant. The proposal is compliant with all the provisions of Chapter 27.13, and kind of the laundry list of parking, private storage, the separate utility metering, laundry area facilities, public improvement districts, density, unit size, outdoor living space, and storage of recreational vehicles. The project is consistent with the policies of the general plans, land use element and the housing element, the fact that it provides mixed use development that's compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and providing an additional for sale housing for the Santa Barbara community, and that the development is also consistent with the principles of sound community planning, and will not have any type of adverse impact upon the neighborhood in terms of aesthetics, parks, streets, traffic, parking, or other kind of community facilities. So I'm assuming you've read the conditions and understand kind of the standard conditions that apply to these projects.
Yes.
All right. Good deal.
Yes, I've read it. And it's fine.
Excellent.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I just want to say that this project, my decision is appealable to the Planning Commission. You have 10 calendar days to submit an appeal in writing, and that we can move on to the very last project. So again, thank you for Ms. Plummer, your ability to keep going through these. So thank you. All right, last one. So we have item number F, 414B, Anacapa Street. The project consists of a one-lot subdivision of a parcel developed with a mixed-use building containing one residential unit and one commercial unit located at 414B Anacapa Street. No demolition or additions are proposed. The 3,692 square foot interior lot is developed with a mixed-use building comprised of 2,672 square foot 4-bedroom residential unit on the first, second, and third floor of the building, and a 533 square foot commercial unit on the first floor. Parking consists of 2 covered parking spaces for the residential unit located in an attached 741 square foot garage and 2 uncovered parking spaces for the commercial unit. There is an off-site parking agreement giving 412 Anacapa Street access to one of the 2 uncovered spaces. Next slide, please, Mr. Russell. The discretionary application required for this project is a tentative subdivision map for a 1-lot subdivision to create 1 residential and 1 commercial condominium unit. The environmental analyst has determined that this project is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Guidelines, Section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. Ms. Plummer, please go ahead and.
Thank you, Ms. Kokinda. And then Mr. Russell, if you can just go to the site plan, please. Thank you. So much like the last 2 items, this project involves a tentative subdivision map for 1-lot subdivision to create 1 residential and 1 commercial condominium within the existing mixed-use building. As noted in the project description, this is a slightly smaller lot. It's 3,692 square feet, with a slightly larger than the other 2 in the other 2 sites residential units. A 2,672 square foot 4-bedroom residential unit that occupies the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floor of the building, and a smaller commercial unit of 533 square feet. And as you noted in the project description, parking is comprised of 2 covered spaces for the residential unit in an existing garage and 2 uncovered spaces. And there's an offsite agreement with 412 Anacapa for access of one of the spaces. And much like the last 2, this project this project site is considered non-conforming to at-grade open yard. However, it does satisfy the private open yard for the residential unit. And Mr. Russell, if you go to the next slide, so we can see the residential floor plan. Thank you. And you can keep it at this size, that works perfectly. So there's a existing 631 square foot private open deck. And you saw that in the original presentation photos, that really large kind of expansive open deck. And then there is also a 132 square foot roof deck. So it more than satisfies the private open yard requirements for the residential unit. As noted in the staff report, the project is consistent with the zoning ordinance requirements for the property, as well as consistent with the general plan, specifically the land use element and the housing element. It also complies with the state's Subdivision Map Act and the overall general plan and the physical standards for the residential condominium, as it has a garage covered parking area for the residential unit. And private storage is able to be waived for this because they have an existing garage. They do have a laundry facility provided in the unit, and the open yard, as I mentioned, is considered non-conforming, so it is still consistent with the requirements for the condominium. And lastly, it is exempt from design review by the Architectural Board of Review, because again, there's no exterior changes being proposed. It's all existing. So really, it's just the technicality of creating the condominium within the existing mixed-use building. And it was found exempt from further CEQA review per guideline section 15303. And I am here for any questions if you do have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plummer. And I will ask the applicant if you wish to say anything else or, okay,
No.
thank you.
just
And
a question.
I'm going to open it up to public comment right now. Thank you, Mr. Russell, for jumping around. If you wish to make a public comment on this particular item, please do so by raising your hand using the hand icon on your GoToWebinar control panel, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. And the raised hand is indicated by a red arrow pointing down. I'm going to give this just a moment. I don't see anyone in attendance, but Ms. Gu, I will use this time to ask you to reconfirm that I did not receive any public comment on this item.
No, I did not receive any written comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Still no hands raised, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment on this item. And Mr. Russell, if you could go back to the plans. So there's kind of similarities between all of these projects, but looking at this particular one, again, we've got the fact that it's non-conforming to the on-grade open yard requirements, but that it met all of the requirements back in 2009 under Title 28. And you know, understanding that the one photo and being able to, you know, be on the site visit and look and understand like that's such a large expanse of open yard for that, the covered deck and then the rooftop. There's just, I can easily agree with staff's findings for this particular project and with the conditions that that Ms. Plummer has added and say that the tentative subdivision map for this is consistent with the general plan and the zoning ordinance of the city of Santa Barbara, and that you know, the site is suitable for the proposed development and the project is consistent with the density provisions of the city's municipal code and general plan, as mentioned in the site in the staff report, and that the proposed use for this is consistent with the vision of the neighborhood of the general plan. In terms of the, and that the design is not going to have, I can make the finding that the design will not have any substantial environmental damage or significant impacts to traffic or air quality, or cause any kind of serious public health concerns. And for the second finding for the new condominium development, that I can make the finding that it is compliant with all provisions of Chapter 27.13, including parking, private storage space, the separate utility metering, laundry facilities, public improvement districts, density, unit size, outdoor living space, and the storage of recreational vehicles as outlined in the staff report. And that the project is consistent with the general plan's land use element and as well as the housing element. And also it's consistent with the principles of sound community planning. My findings again would come with the conditions of approval that are included in the staff report, which are standard for these types of projects. And I think other than that, if Ms. Plummer, if I'm not missing anything, I can just say that this project, my decision is appealable to the Planning Commission, that you would have 10 calendar days to appeal my decision and that it needs to be in writing. And otherwise, thank you so much for your applications and your patience. And I think I can go ahead, and that was the last item for this meeting. So I can go ahead and adjourn the staff hearing officer meeting for June 2nd, 2021.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.